Hey, Pastor Tarun here. Welcome to Authentic Church. It's so good to have you with us. We really pray that this sermon blesses you and helps you to experience the authentic love of Jesus Christ in your life today. Hey, before we get into the message, can you do me a favor and hit the subscribe button so that we can keep you up to date with the latest sermons every week? All right, here's the message.
But Pastor Mel started a series called A Better Way. And what we've been doing is asking the question, what can we learn from the way that Jesus moved through life, the way he moved through his ministry, that may inform us of how we can live our lives in a better way. You know, Pastor Mel posed the question a couple of weeks ago. It's all very well to do the work of the ministry. It's all very well to follow Jesus, but sometimes it's not what you do, but it's how you do it. And I don't know about you, I've been very challenged by Mel's messages. Last week I was in Melbourne, but I was tuned in online and I listened to the message and I came away thinking, you know what? I've got it back the front sometimes. Sometimes I get so focused and so consumed with the doing of the ministry or the following of Jesus that I forget that Jesus didn't do anything at the expense of the relationships in his world. You know, Jesus always took time out to be with the Father. He always took time out to rest, to recuperate. And I think many of you have felt the same challenge because I've had conversations throughout this week where many of you have said to me, what Mel was talking about, that's me too. And I think it's a very timely reminder, you know, at this time of the year, sometimes it can be a bit frantic, tax time and all of that. It can be a little bit busy, work and children and all of the rest can happen. But it's to take a cue from Jesus and say, you know what, how can I take a step back? How can I just take time to just recalibrate, to recuperate, to put Jesus at the center of all that I'm doing, to make sure that I'm taking time for the things that are most important? Because like Pastor Mel said last week, we make time for what we consider is most important. And I think sometimes we make time for a lot of things that seem important, but in the long run are really not that important at all. Amen. And so I want to just continue along that theme today, and I want to speak to you about a topic of being present in the moment. One of the things that we can learn from Jesus is he was always very present. Whenever he interacted with anybody, he was there in the moment. He was never distracted. He was never doing something else. You know, I know I'm guilty of this. Sometimes I'll be trying to do two things at once. You know, somebody will want to talk to me and I'll say, walk with me and talk to me while I'm doing something else. You know, I'm always thinking about something else that I have to do, or my kids will come and they want to talk to me and I say, yes, I'll talk to you, but after I finish what I'm doing. You know, I've got something I'm doing right now that I need to give attention, and I'm missing moments with my kids and I'm missing moments with other people because I'm consumed by the busyness of life and I'm not being present and in the moment. Kai, can you do something for me? Can we just turn these spotlights off and let's just go old school with fluorescent lights for today, so we don't have that flickering? That'd be awesome. Thank you. And so I want you to do something right now. I want you to just take a moment, put your phones down, put your pens down if you're taking notes, whatever's in your hand. I want you to just do this. I do this with children sometimes when I was teaching in school. Just clasp your hands together like that, all right? And just put them in front of you. And I want you to just say this, I'm here. I'm here. And take a deep breath in. And let's be present together. The reality is, over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to lose 50% of you to your phones. And that's not just me guessing. That's Harvard studies say that 40% of people are so distracted by their phones that they don't know what's going on around them. The average person will touch their phone 2,500 times in a day. A really, really addicted person will touch their phone 5,500 times a day. You know, and I know I put myself in that category so often. Even in worship, while I was worshiping then, I had this urge to pick up my phone because I had to send a message to Matt about the lights. And I thought, no, be in the moment. Just put your phone down. Just stop. And And I want to encourage you just for the next 30 minutes, let's just be here. If you're online, let's just be here. Close all the other tabs, because I know you're flicking between Facebook and this sermon right now, and you're checking your emails while you're watching the sermon. Just close everything else. Let's be here together right now and say, Jesus, what do you want to say to us today? What do you want to say to us today? So I think it's appropriate for me to sit. Let's just be here today, all right? And one of the things that I think we can learn from Jesus in the way that he ministered was whenever he was with people, he always stopped and gave them his full, undivided attention. And he was always aware of where he was and what was going on, and he adapted the way that he interacted with people based on the environment that he was in. And the first miracle that Jesus ever did, which is a really cool miracle, Jesus, you probably know this, is Jesus turned water into wine at a wedding in Canaan. Many of you know this story. Jesus is at a wedding. It's not his wedding. It's a mate's wedding. It doesn't even say whose wedding it is. And halfway through the wedding, they run out of wine. And the servants come to Jesus' mother and they say, we're out of wine, what should we do? And Jesus' mother says, go and talk to him. He can fix this. And Jesus is like, I don't want to fix this. I'm enjoying the wedding. I'm not here to do miracles. I'm here to be present. But Jesus tells the servants to go and fill up some water jars with water, and then he blesses them, and they turn to wine, and the host of the wedding is so amazed at the quality of the wine. He says, normally we leave the good stuff up front, and then we bring out the cheap stuff once everybody's drunk. But you guys, you brought the good stuff out now. It's like we're late in the night, everybody's drunk, but you're bringing out the good wine now. And what I think is so interesting about this miracle is the Gospels don't actually say that there was any other agenda other than Jesus was just trying to make sure that the party kept going. It doesn't say anything about him trying to tell everybody that he was the Messiah. In fact, he says, don't tell anybody about this. He tries to talk his mum out of it. He says, no, I don't want to be, I'm not on ministry at the moment. I'm on sabbatical. It's my day off. Don't ask me to do miracles today. But Jesus interacts with the moment and he says, you know what? That's what this moment needs. This moment needs this wedding to go off without a hitch. It doesn't need a drama because, see, for ancient people, if you ran out of wine at a wedding, the host of the wedding, it would cause them great humiliation and great shame to their family. And so Jesus in the moment understands, I don't want them to experience humiliation. I don't want them to experience shame. So I'm going to intervene on this moment, be present in this moment for no other purpose than for the love of the people that he was with. And if we look at the way Jesus interacts time and time again, this is the way he does it. In Luke, there is a story of Jesus going to Jericho, and Jesus is walking along, and this blind man calls out and he says, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And do you know what the disciples say? Don't bother the master, he's busy. He's too busy going to Jericho. He hasn't got time for you. You're not an important person. But Jesus hears his name being called and he stops. And he goes to the man and he says, what can I do for you? You see, Jesus stops his busyness, whatever. He was on his way somewhere. He had appointments. He had things to do, and yet he stops. And the man says, I want to be healed. And Jesus heals him. Jesus takes a moment for the person that nobody had time for. The disciples didn't have time for him. If he was begging by the street, it's probably fair to say his family didn't have time for him. Society had largely rejected him as not worthy of my time. And yet Jesus in the moment, in his busyness, in his ministry, he stops and he says, what can I do for you? In the next chapter of Luke, in chapter 19, Jesus encounters another man. He's a wee little man and he's up a tree. If you've been to Sunday school, you probably know the song. Zacchaeus, he was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. Zacchaeus, the tax collector, was up a tree, and Jesus is walking along with these crowds of people, and he stops, and he sees Zacchaeus up a tree. And he says, Zacchaeus, come down. I want to have lunch with you. Now, the interesting thing about this story is that Zacchaeus was not a guy that anybody wanted to have lunch with. See, Zacchaeus was a tax collector. And in those days, tax collectors were basically glorified mobsters. They were empowered by the Roman Empire to collect the taxes for Caesar, and then they had permission to add on any extra fees and charges they wanted. And so they would walk around adding these exorbitant fees and charges to the taxes and then beating anybody that didn't pay. And so he was hated by his community. He was hated because he was an extortionist. He was a gangster. And yet Jesus stops for this man that the rest of society would have no time for. And he says, man, I'm coming to your house. I'm going to have lunch. And the interesting thing about this story in Luke 19, it says Jesus was going through Jericho. He was already finished in Jericho. He was on his way out. He was going somewhere else. And yet again, he takes time and he stops. And he says, how can I interact with this person? And in that day, Jesus came to Zacchaeus' house and he was transformed by the love and the mercy of Jesus, so much so that Zacchaeus said that I'm going to repay 4 times everything that I've extorted from everybody else. Now, whether he did or not, I don't know. But there was something of that moment that he had with Jesus that so transformed him that it caused him to actually turn around his whole life. And I guess I'm left with the question of how often do I pass over those little opportunities, those moments where I could stop and interact with somebody at the level that they are and actually bring transformation to their life. How often do I miss moments with my children or my spouse because I'm so busy doing other things? I'm either scrolling through my phone or I'm doing work or I'm on my laptop or I'm watching Netflix or I'm doing the garden. No, I don't ever do gardening. How often do we miss those moments in our lives that are so fleeting, so passing? Yet Jesus, the Son of God, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, was able to stop and take these moments and be present where he was. And so today I just want to talk about a couple of little keys that I'm learning, I think, from examining the way that Jesus did ministry. And I'm going to put my hand up and say, I'm still learning. I'm not good at this. This is something that God is challenging me on. God is challenging Melanie on. And we're reevaluating the way that we do life and ministry because we know that it's not healthy. And for many of you, you might be in the same place. You might recognize yourself in these stories. And you might say, that's not healthy for me either. And I need to make adjustments. And what I would encourage you to do is don't beat yourself up if you get it wrong. Don't beat yourself up if you don't get it perfect the first day, but just go on a journey and say, God, how can I adjust my life to be more in tune with what you're doing in my community and in my family? One of the things the first thing I think that we need to be aware of is that we spend so much time wishing our moments away because we're obsessed with what comes next. Have you ever noticed that? When I was in high school, all I ever talked about was being finished at high school. I can't wait till high school is over. And then when I went to college, all I could talk about was I can't wait till college is over and I can go and get a real job. And then I got a real job and I used to always say to myself, I can't wait till I can have a better job that pays more, that doesn't do the kind of work that I do. And then I got a better job. And then I said, I can't wait to get a different job because I don't like this better job that pays more. I want the job that that person's got because they look like they're having more fun than I'm having. And then I got the job that that person was doing. And then I realized it wasn't as fun as it looked. And I started to wonder, how could I get another job that is less arduous and less taxing and less responsibility than this one? And now I'm 47. And in many ways, I've kind of reached the peak of the jobs that I wanted to get. I'm a senior pastor, and I think, wasn't it wonderful when I was in high school and I had no responsibilities and I could do whatever I wanted? You know, we spend so much of our lives wanting the next thing, and we miss the moments that we're in. We miss those things that are so fleeting and so passing. You know, and my boys are going through high school now. One of them's already out of high school, and one of them's graduating this year, and I've got another one in high school. And, you know, I see the same conversations happening. Oh, my gosh, I'm so sick of high school. I can't wait till I'm finished high school. I can't wait till I'm working. And I'm thinking, yeah, I would argue that you're probably better to stay in high school a few more years. Enjoy it while you can, because you thought 13 years was a long time. Wait till you have to work for 50 years. That's a really long time. You know, but how often do we talk about things like our family moments? You know, when I was a young dad and the kids were screaming and waking me up at night with their teething and their feeding, and I would say, oh, I can't wait till they just sleep through the night. And then they sleep through the night, and then it's like they want to get up at 5 in the morning, and it's like, I can't wait till they're teenagers and they want to sleep in. And now they're teenagers. I'm like, get out of bed, you lazy bum. Do something with your life. And we spend the whole of their growing up wishing that they were older. And then you realize, hang on a second, I can't hold that little boy anymore. You know, when I remember the day Kai was first born. It was our first baby, and Kai was a tiny baby. He was premature, and he fitted between my elbow and my palm. And I used to cradle his head in my hand, and his legs would hang over the back of my elbow like this. And he was so tiny and so fragile, and now he's a giant oaf, and he's bigger than me. And you know, and I think about those days, and I think how much of a hurry I was in for him to grow up. But then he grew up, and now I spend all my time wishing that he was little again so I could savor those moments one more time. Young people, I want to encourage you, don't wish your moments away. Don't wish your moments away. If you're as old as me, and you probably remember a song that was called Cats in the Cradle. And it's a story about a man that had a little baby, and the little baby came into the world in the usual way, but there were bills to pay and things to do, and he learnt to walk while I was away. And this father tells the story of missing all the moments of his child growing up because he was so busy working. And then when he got old, and he would call his grown-up son, and he would say, son, I'd love to spend time with you. Can we go and hang out? Can we have a coffee? And his son would repeat the same thing to him. Dad, I'd love to do it, but there's bills to pay, and I'm so busy, and I've got work, and my kids have got the flu, and we'll just do it another day. And before we know it, those moments evaporate and they disappear. You know, Melanie and I have many times joked that when our children are 18, we're going to move out of the house and leave them in the house and go and have some peace and quiet. Because our house is chaotic. You know, we've got 8 people living in our house at the moment, and it's like a zoo. And last night, I listened to Melanie talking to her dad, who is in Melbourne, and he's lonely. He's in his 80s, and Melanie's mum passed away a couple of years ago, and he said, all I want to do is I want to see you guys. I just want to see you. I miss you so much. And as I sat there listening to this conversation, I thought, you know, we're in such a hurry to get rid of our children, or such a hurry to get rid of those moments, but then when they're gone, they're gone. They're gone. And so what Jesus says is, instead of worrying about tomorrow, instead of focusing all your energy on tomorrow, in Matthew 6, he says, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough problems of its own. It doesn't need you to actually worry. What Jesus says is to be present today. You know, don't worry about tomorrow. I'll look after tomorrow. But what you need to do is focus on today. What's happening in your life today? What moments are you missing today because you're worried about tomorrow? For some of us, it's not tomorrow that we worry about, but we spend a lot of time thinking about yesterday. We think about the people that hurt us. We think about the opportunities that we missed. We think about the things that didn't go the way that we wanted them to go. And yet, there's nothing we can do to change that. We're here. This moment right now, together in this room, is the only moment where we are fully engaged in real life. And yet so much of our real life is spent in the past or in the future. James puts it this way. James in chapter 4, he says, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we'll go into such and such a town and we'll spend a year there and trade and make profits, but you don't even know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? But you're just a mist that appears for a second and then vanishes." We make plans for tomorrow, and it's not bad to plan for tomorrow. It's not bad to be responsible and, have a job and plan for your retirement and whatever it might be that you're planning for. But what James is saying is you can spend so much time obsessing over tomorrow, but you don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. Tomorrow may never even come. Our life is just a vapor. It's just a and it's gone. In God's economy, God, who is outside of time, who has been here before time actually began and will be here long after time has ended, in God's time scale, we're just a blip on the radar. We're just a moment. And that moment is a gift that God gives us to enjoy. It's a gift that he gives us to be present in. It's a gift that he gives us to say, you know what, for this moment I was here with this person and I remember it. I wonder if you think about the times when you've been at a funeral. What are the things we talk about when we're at a funeral? Nobody ever talks about, oh, he didn't get the dishes done before he died. He didn't clean his room before he died. I wish he was more organized and wasn't such a slob. We don't talk about things like that, do we? We talk about things like, remember the time when we went on this holiday together, or remember how he used to play with the kids, or to remember what she used to do when she was cooking dinner. We remember moments when we were present with the person. And I want to encourage all of you, and I'm speaking to myself as well, let's take time out to remember moments, to be present. Last week I was at a leadership training, and the senior pastor of Jesus Culture from the US was preaching, and he was talking to pastors, and he was saying, there's a whole lot of things that we obsess over as pastors, and none of them really matter in the whole scale of things. We think about the number of people that turned up to church on a Sunday. We think about whether the light show was good, or whether music sounded good, or whether we've got enough people in our life group, or whether anybody jumped on the live stream, or whether enough people were tithing. But at the end of the day, what matters is, did we spend time in the presence of God? Did we spend time getting to know the Father? This is why I think Jesus relates God as Father. He wants us to have those moments of intimacy where we say, you know what, God, I can't control what's going on in my life. I can't control what's coming up tomorrow. I can't control what happened yesterday. But right now, in this moment, I'm going to be present. I'm going to welcome you. I'm going to spend time with you. I'm going to listen for your voice. Because at the end of the day, that's the stuff that matters. When my son climbs up on the arm of my chair while I'm trying to watch Netflix, and he tries to talk to me about some computer game that he's obsessed with. And for me, it's an irritation because I don't like computer games and I don't care about his computer game. But I'm missing the moment because what he's actually trying to do is he's trying to connect with me. He's trying to have a moment with me. And I have to remind myself that those moments disappear so quickly. I love what my mum has started doing with our children, is she organises a day once a week where she invites one of them over for dinner. And she spends a night with them. She just cooks them their favourite meal. She sits and talks with them. I notice you haven't invited me for dinner, Mum. So maybe she's sending a message that she likes the grandchildren more. But, I'm joking, I know. But, those moments are the moments that we can take cue from Jesus and say, do you know what? That's what matters most. We worry about decisions that we haven't made. We worry about debts that we won't pay. We worry about things that haven't happened. And we worry about things that we will never be able to change. And yet Jesus is saying, be present. You know what God says? He says, be still. Be still and know that I'm God. It's only when we're actually still, when we stop all the busyness, that we actually get to know who God is. Are you following me? Are you still with me? Is anyone feeling like, yeah, okay, I need to address something in my life? I'm putting up my hand. I'm being honest. I need to do this too. We need to be still. We need to know who God is. You know, the psalmist in Psalm 118 says this. He says, "This is the day that the Lord has made." This day. This day is the day that God has made. And I will, or we will, it's a choice, we will rejoice in it. We will be glad in it. Every moment, every day that God gives us is a gift. And we have a choice to rejoice in it. We have a choice to enjoy it. We have a choice to connect with the people around us rather than rushing by and missing those moments. But those choices are up to us. Like Pastor Melanie said last week, we make time for the things that we think are important. And I know that I have to recalibrate what I think is important and start saying, you know what, God, I need to make more time to spend with you. I need to make more time to connect with my children and my wife and my family. I need to take more time to just stop and be still. I want to leave you with a thought. You can't be happy where you're not. A lot of the time we chase happiness in a place or in a time that we are not. The only place you can experience happiness is now. Is now. We can plan for happiness. We can desire happiness. We could wish for happiness. But the only time you enjoy it and experience it is right now. My wife challenged me the other night. We were on day 9. She said, "You've been really grumpy lately. You've been grumpy, and I don't know why, and whatever it is you're being grumpy about, you need to sort it out." And she was right, and I acknowledge it. And I have been grumpy. I've been grumpy about a lot of things. And when I took stock, when I took the time to just reflect, I was grumpy about a whole bunch of things that I couldn't control. I was grumpy about something that happened last week, and I was grumpy about something that happened 10 years ago, and I was grumpy about something that might happen in the future that I don't even know, but I was thinking about it, and it was making me grumpy just thinking about it. I was grumpy about a whole bunch of things, and none of them were about things that were now. None of them were about things in the moment. And I had to make a choice yesterday. I had to say, Tarun, it's time to stop being grumpy about things you can't change, because you can't be happy in a place that you're not. You can't serve Jesus where you're not. We talk a lot about serving Jesus. We talk a lot about being obedient to Jesus. We talk a lot about following Jesus. But there's one thing to talk about it, and it's another thing to actually be there and do it. It's another thing to respond in the moment when we hear the Father's voice and say, you know what, I'm going to be obedient. I'm going to just do that. I'm going to connect with that person. I'm going to hug somebody. I'm going to buy them a coffee. I'm going to tell them that Jesus loves them. Whatever that moment is that God is speaking to you, do that. Do that. Don't worry about what could happen or might happen or might not happen. Just do that, what God is speaking to you. And finally, you can't love people where you are not. The only people you can love are the people that are right here now. The only people you can truly love are the people that God has placed around you right now. And so with that, I want to encourage you. Let us not get so caught up pursuing tomorrow. Let us not get so tied down trying to change yesterday. Let's be in the moment like Jesus and say, God, you're here. I'm here. I want to be present. Show me how I can be more present to the people that I love, to the people I don't love, to the people that you've called me to. You know, I find it fascinating that when Jesus was on the cross And the moment where he probably could have had the most excuse for being focused on himself. You know, he had been beaten beyond recognition. He had a crown of thorns put on his head. He had been crucified in what is described as one of the most excruciating ways to die. His nails through his wrists and his feet. He was suffocating from the weight of his own body hanging off those nails. And in that moment, a scoundrel on another cross says, "Jesus, have you got time for me?" And he says, "Well, actually, I was just hanging around. I got all the time in the world." In the moment that you could excuse Jesus for being focused on his own pain, on his own grief, on his own anguish, even in that moment, Jesus says, "You know what? I've got time for you. I've got time for you." And I hope that we can take that as an example, that no matter what we're going through, and we all go through stuff, we all have pain, we all have experiences that are hard to go through. But no matter what we're going through, that we never get so consumed with ourselves that we haven't got time for the people that God puts beside us, that God puts around us. Because it doesn't take much. It usually just takes a hug, or a coffee, or a 5-minute chat. But that we get so consumed with ourselves that we forget that there's a whole world that is dying on our doorstep, and they need us to be present. They need us to be present so that they can find life in abundance. Amen.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We really pray that that message blessed you. If you enjoyed it, why don't you share it with a friend that you think will enjoy it also? And hit a like and give us a comment, because we'd love to hear back from you. If you'd like to give to the work of Authentic Church or get more involved, head over to our website, authenticchurch.com.au. We look forward to seeing you next time.